I will be honest. I feel a level of indifference that I usually don't feel when someone who had an iconic stature when I was growing up from my childhood dies. But in this case, it's this level of indifference because I'm not celebrating it, but on the other hand, I'm not like thoughts and prayers mode either. Like I feel like there's no great loss here because of who this man became and who he was when, when it's really revealed what his private life was and what he did. And so when this happened, the death of OJ Simpson, it was a strange feeling because most of the other people that I knew growing up, as celebrities, whether they're sports figures, actors, even if I wasn't a great fan of theirs, there's a sense of sadness that I did not feel.
You're the guy. You're the guy who did a moment of silence on our show once for Michael Jackson's dead chimp.
Well, did the chimp? Well,
it was a good chimp.
It was a good chimp, right?
Wasn't that the chimp that ripped that woman's face off in Connecticut? Was it?
No, but that was one of our best broadcasts ever.
I mean, where my immediately I'm thinking of Ron and Nicole. I'm thinking of two young lives that were taken, and one that, like, Ron didn't even have a connection to O.J. Simpson. Not like O.J. Simpson has a right to murder Nicole. Obviously not, the mother of his children. But at least there you can understand, his rage and whatever was going on in this relationship, because there was an obvious history, right? Like the rage at Ron Goldman. This is a guy who recently became friendly with Nicole, was returning glasses that they had left at the Mezzaluna restaurant. And this shouldn't have happened to anyone, but my goodness.
Well, I mean, the rage spreads to the other man.
Yeah, I guess, but like it to me, that's where the sadness is. And when I think of Ron, I just pictured that moment after the verdict, and you literally see the gut punch that Fred Goldman received. Like he's hunched over as the camera swings over. He's hunched over, and to me, when I look at this case, this saga, this story, this trial, that's the moment that sticks with me. And this was before, I wasn't at Court TV during this trial. I wasn't there. But this was the moment, I think, that really made me understand that if a family has a loss that they never recuperate from, but if they don't even get justice, it's like it's salt in the wound, and that's all they have left. It's just that moment where you can say, yes, we're never the same. We've lost our loved one, but at least, someone was held accountable for it, and the truth was told, and that didn't happen.
Okay, but from the standpoint of from a historical context, this whole thing, this horrendous event, changed television as we know it. Okay, it became it destroyed soap operas. Try to find soap operas now in the afternoon. They're very rare. They used to be on all the time. What has happened? We have become.
Oh, wait, I'm removing just to put you guys back in the right spot.
Oh,
I just had to rearrange you. Sorry.
Thank you. And as Jennifer said hi to me. Thank you, Jennifer Supe. I appreciate that. But what I was going to say is that reality TV now dominates afternoon television, and that is all because of the OJ trial. That was a 9-month period where everyone was glued to their television sets, and it was probably the only trial that I can remember where lay people actually knew the names of all the lawyers. the names of the prosecutors, the names of the judge, and everything else down the line. I mean, it really transcended everything that we do, with court TV and all the stuff that we've been going forward with. And from a personal standpoint, look, it was horrendous. I mean, he was found not guilty. I mean, I see some people say he was found innocent. He was not found innocent. He was found not guilty. There's a difference. Okay, he was found responsible in a civil trial, okay, for the actions, and as a result of that, he was sued, and there was a judgment against him and multiple millions of dollars. But America was talking about prosecutors. America was talking about, Christopher Darden and this, that, the other thing. And it really was horrendous to see that they became a cult of personality almost.
All of them.
Which was
careers out of it.
And that was, and honestly, from the standpoint of the prosecutor, it destroyed the trial. It destroyed that trial. I mean, Judge Ito and all the stuff that was going on with him and the things that were going on, and the prosecutors became celebrities.
Do you remember the dancing Itos on the Tonight Show?
Yes. Yep. And I mean, from a horrific standpoint, I remember Vince Bugliosi talking about the fact that these prosecutors were having a social life during this trial.
That was strange. Like when would a prosecutor in the middle of a case like this have time to get a perm?
Never.
Jonesy, did you ever get a perm?
I did, actually, when I was like 16. My sister's influence.
Right.
I was young, and my sister wanted me to get a wave.
Okay.
So
that takes time. Like to get a perm, it takes time. Like you go there, they wrap the foil, everything else that goes. It's not like a 15-minute, 20-minute thing. You're there for hours. And I don't know how you have hours in the middle of a trial like this.
You don't.
It's crazy.
You don't have the ability to have a social life on a trial that's going on. I mean, it was the longest trial at that point in history. It was 9 months.
I think it was 136 days of trial. That's a lot.
Longer than the Manson trial.
There's the curls. There are the curls. Look at those curls. That's not the worst part, though.
Bugliosi was saying that, look, when I did this trial, I wasn't doing, social things. I wasn't going out and getting things done. I got done with my day at trial, and then I went and I did my research and did my work and got stuff going forward. He locked himself away from his family at that point in time to concentrate on the trial.
There's the hair.
And this was just a joke that what they ended up doing.
That's I can't imagine that's her natural. Like either she got it straightened and that takes time, or she got it permed.
I think she got it permed.
Yeah, I think in the 90s you're getting things permed.
They had makeup artists, Vinny. They were more, they were concentrating on that kind of stuff. They weren't concentrating on the facts of the case.
And you know what? It worked.
This was a slam dunk.
Ooh.
A slam dunk.
Was it a slam dunk? By the way, good morning to Melly. Can we say good morning to Melly?
Good morning, Melly. Thank you. Actually, I did work at Court TV at the time, and it became our life. The day that the incident actually happened, I was late for work. I called into the boss, and she said, "Did you hear?" And before he was even charged, she said, "This is going to be our life for the next year or two," and it was.
It was.
There was a fellow I worked with, Fred Graham, who was very famous for CBS News. And one day I asked Fred early on, is there any chance for OJ? And he called it. He said, well, they could play some sort of race situation. However, I don't think Robert Shapiro is the man for that job. Soon thereafter, they brought in, the rest of the crew. And
right. Dolores has a great point here, by the way. And we may be totally off base here. Yes, there's the upfront time to get your hair permed, but then once it's permed, it becomes easier to care for.
And I think she was going. I'd have to disagree. I think she was going for a look. They were all going for a look. They all saw this as a ticket, and it became a ticket. She got a TV talk show. Chris Darden got a radio talk show, which kills me because that's my life. Everybody became a star. Even Kato Kaelin became like a talk show host.
It was remarkable, and what was even more funny in a very, very gallows humor type way is how O.J. Simpson, who was basically a fixture in the white community, all of a sudden became a fixture in the black community. And you didn't see that before. I mean, OJ, and my little story about OJ, okay, was that there was a country club in New Jersey, I'm not going to give the name of it, that refused my grandfather to be a member of because he was Catholic. And they didn't allow Catholics or they didn't allow Jews in this country club. And there was, I'm sorry?
What's left?
The Wasps.
Oh, the Wasps. Okay.
The Wasps. Okay. So they wouldn't allow Catholics. They wouldn't allow Jews. They were getting a rash of garbage for that. And as a result of that, they ended up making OJ an honorary member of this country club because he was in New York doing sports and things along those lines. And so now he had a beautiful country club to play in New Jersey. And he was their black member of the country club.
I remember that. I believe they
I
kicked him out during it or afterwards.
Well, yeah. After he was accused of the murder, he was unceremoniously removed.
Did they chase him in his golf cart? Like, was he like trying to?
It was white too, Vinny. And then at a golf outing, I actually got to use his locker. So,
cool.
Very nice.
It's funny. I'm so far removed from your world that when you said country club, I thought to myself, well, New Jersey did have a lot of country music clubs back in the day. I had no idea what you were talking about.
Yes, no, OJ was a big golfer.
It's important. We got to deal with this because Tiger 3, Frankie Figs, thanks for putting this up there. Frankie Figs and Gen X Granny keeping control of the masses today. We should ask Vinny if it's true that from a legal standpoint, being acquitted is not the same as being innocent, may just be semantics. Here's the way I explain it. You ready? And Al and Jonesy, you can disagree. Obviously, Al probably will.
I will.
But I look at it this way. In our system of justice, you are presumed innocent. So if the prosecution doesn't prove the case to the jury beyond a reasonable doubt, they vote not guilty, but you're still cloaked in that presumption of innocence. So I believe you can say that a criminal defendant, after a not guilty verdict, has been found presumptively innocent, which is different than being found actually or factually innocent. You see, two different things.
Here's the thing, though. You can't be. There is no innocent. You can't be found innocent. So in this case, because we know that he was guilty.
Jonesy, did you listen to me? Did you hear what I said?
I did.
That you're presumed innocent in our system of justice.
Right. You presume.
Right.
But
and the presumption doesn't go away until the case has been proven beyond any and all reasonable doubt.
It never goes away in some cases.
Yeah. But that's just a presumptive innocence. That's not actual innocence.
Right, but there is no, a jury can't find you innocent. So what if you truly are innocent? You're cloaked in that presumptuous innocence for the rest of your life?
Yeah, unless you have some evidence that you people will suspect. Like, where do you go to get your name back, right? That's maybe you go to a civil court if someone accused you of being a murderer, and you go to civil court to get your name back. Johnny Depp went and got his name back. Huh?
You're just. I'm talking here.
Hey,
your distinction. Okay.
Wait a minute. Linda thinks she has naturally curly hair.
I don't think so. It started out straight, and it was a big deal. It was a big deal. Everybody was talking about
that's
her.
Right.
That term was a big deal. I remember that was on the front page of papers and stuff like that.
So
by the way, talking about big deal, O.J. Simpson was the first athlete on the cover of Rolling Stone magazine.
Wow.
What for? I mean,
You know what? I think it was probably because he was in. It had to have been something with maybe the Towering Inferno or something along those lines. Okay, because he was in that movie. All right, and that was one of the biggest action films. Irwin Allen, the
Yes.
the Towering Inferno, which was basically the Poseidon Adventure, but on land. And he was in that, but he was on the cover of Rolling Stone. First athlete on the cover of Rolling Stone.
so
Actually, the first non-musician on the cover of Rolling Stone.
now I don't know if you guys saw my interview. I interviewed Kato last night on the show. Kaelin came on.
Does he still have hair?
Yeah, he looks great. He sounds great. He is, and he's all along believed that O.J. Simpson is guilty. And he wasn't part of getting O.J. acquitted. He testified truthfully. He was,
Right.
I think, and I believe, I didn't ask him this, but I did a little research ahead of time, and I believe that he had a big defamation, speaking of defamation, a settlement with one of the tabloids, because one of the tabloids was pointing the finger at Kato during all this. And I think he got like a $15 million settlement from one of the tabloids that accused him of being part of the murder, which is crazy. He actually told me last night he knew Nicole like longer than he knew OJ, and had actually lived, I believe, on her property or part of her, wherever she was at some point before he lived with OJ. And he's actually a guy from Wisconsin, which I didn't know either.
Well, he did get a bad rap with regards to this. And, and all he was a guy who, he was basically made fun of because he was a guy living in a guest house, on the property of O.J. Simpson. He didn't look like he had any employment, didn't look like he was doing anything. And he did get a bad rap in this. And it's nice to see that he's actually moved forward. He wasn't an actor. He was an actor.
As far as him suing the tabloids, that brings up another thing that came out of OJ. The National Enquirer became a source for news, because the National Enquirer, if it's a gossip rag thing, didn't have to vet information. So when they were covering OJ, they were able, just like these true crime like podcasts, they were able to say things that weren't necessarily vetted. And the news is sacred. It's black and white, as Lou Grant once said. They didn't have to do that. So they became like a source, an actual source of news, which they never were.
Now, After Dark, wondering or reminding us of a rumor that Chris and Marcia were dating.
Yes.
I think that was established, wasn't it?
I think it was. Yeah.
Really? Scandalous.
Yes.
Scandalous, I might say. Wow.
Well, I got to tell you,
they're working together. So
one of the biggest, one of the things that was unbelievable about O.J. Simpson is how the fact that he got Norm Macdonald fired on Saturday Night Live.
Who did?
Really?
O.J. Simpson, was very, very good friends with the producer of Saturday Night Live.
Well, that's right, because he was a sports guy.
And that's right. Brendan Tartikoff, I believe. And so as a result of that, they had warned Norm Macdonald, who was doing Weekend Update, that he was not to do anything on any jokes about O.J. Simpson. And O.J. Simpson could, Norm Macdonald could not live with that. So, these are a couple of the quotes that he got in trouble with. In his book, O.J. Simpson says that he would have taken a bullet or stood in front of a train for Nicole. Man, I'm going to tell you, that is some bad luck when the one guy who would have died for you kills you. You don't get worse luck than that. That's a great line. According to the National Transportation Safety Board, sleepy truckers are responsible for 1,000 deaths a year. In second place, O.J. Simpson at 2 deaths a year. And then this week, the O.J. Simpson trial, the infamous bloody glove was finally introduced into evidence, and O.J. didn't help his case by blurting out, "There it is. I've been looking all over for that thing."
That's funny.
And those are the jokes that ended up getting Norm Macdonald fired from Saturday Night.
You know what else came out of OJ that a lot of people don't realize, especially younger generations, probably, is the Kardashians.
Well,
the whole Kardashian thing came from their father, who was on the defense team.
That's right. And O.J. Simpson had pictures of Kim Kardashian and the Playboy shots of her in his cell.
Wow, that's pretty sick.
Yeah,
I didn't know that. So here's the other big thing. Thank you, Callie Dime. This is a great point. DNA. You know, you go back in time. This is at the beginning of where DNA is being introduced and being used in trials across the country. So introducing DNA and explaining it to a jury was a very long, involved process. It isn't anymore. I think the public understands it. It's done a lot more quickly inside a courtroom, but it was just beginning to be accepted and understood. Here's the thing about this case. And, you know, a lot of people criticize the prosecution for being a little arrogant. Well, I think they were arrogant going in because they had his DNA, O.J. Simpson's DNA, at the scene of the crime. They lived
there.
He didn't live there.
No, he didn't live there.
No. His blood in the walkway on the blade, right. Like, because you know when that happens, you're going to cut your own hand as well.
They had his shoe prints.
They had the shoe prints, but they didn't have the shoes in the criminal trial, only in the civil trial. The Brunos. Now,
right.
They also had.
But talk about it. A horrendous prosecution. He denied wearing those types of shoes. He said, they're ugly ass shoes. He was calling them or something along those lines. The prosecution had over 30 photographs with him wearing those shoes, and none of that got in. Yeah. I mean, this is just ridiculous.
But I don't think it would have mattered. And here's why. So there was also the DNA and blood in the Bronco, and then the glove that was retrieved back at the Rockingham estate, right? And that glove had everyone's DNA and blood on it, right? So it's obviously at the scene of the crime. So what does the defense do? The defense argument is that he was framed by police, led by Mark Fuhrman, who was a racist detective. That's what the defense was here, right? So the explanation for all the DNA evidence, the way you could discount it as a juror, was if you believed it was a reasonable explanation that it was the racist lead detective, Mark Fuhrman, along with others, who planted all this evidence, because that's the only explanation. It's either, he's either there at the crime scene or it's planted there after the fact. And that was the argument. So how was it reasonable for the jury to believe that, right? There's two things though. There's two things. And this is what the case really came down to. And I don't think it's been played up enough. Mark Fuhrman is asked on the witness stand, did you plant any evidence? And he took the fifth. If you take that simple fact and insert it into any trial,
right,
where the lead investigator is asked, did you plant any evidence? And they take the fifth, that to me, that's reasonable doubt served up on a platter. It doesn't matter about any other evidence. Right?
How about this line of questioning? Marine to Marine, have you ever hidden something to the effect of, have you ever hidden a throwaway gun in your sock? It was something to that effect. And that was F. Lee Bailey, I believe, right?
Right. F. Lee Bailey was the one who got the dirt on Fuhrman. He was the one that was able to get that information.
His investigator.
Well, but I mean, he was the attorney that was in charge of going after Fuhrman on the stand and things along those lines.
That was his sole duty, as I recall.
But they had tapes of him saying the N-word. They had a bunch of stuff along those lines that, and then he claimed that he never did, and this, that, the other thing. You're right, Vinny. Fuhrman screwed this investigation up from the beginning, though, with the stuff without getting a search warrant and things along. There was no emergent situation with regards to the fact they could have very easily sealed up the area, gotten search warrants, and they didn't.
Well, there was also another detective who was asked, did you go over that fence because you had thought that OJ may have did it because of your previous experiences with spousal abuse and such? And he swore that he didn't. But I myself questioned whether he was telling the truth. And once somebody doesn't tell the truth on the stand, can you not dismiss everything else they say?
Right. It's called false in one, false in all.
But explain to me, though, like if the lead investigator in any trial, and we've got the Karen Reed trial coming up next week, where the defense is the same. They're alleging a police cover-up. And if an officer gets up on the witness stand and is asked, did you plant evidence? And he takes the fifth, how is that not game over in any trial? And I think that point was because it was a 9-month trial, and that was 11 seconds of the testimony in a 9-month trial, it gets overlooked. But how could you overlook it? To me, that is
that's game over.
That's game over.
And not knowing that, okay, as a prosecutor, you need to vet your witnesses, okay? And there's a case called Brady, which means that you have to give all the warts and everything about your witnesses to the other side. They have the right to take a look at his IA, his internal affairs history, any other charges that have gone against him, if he's ever had offenses that were sustained as a result of being a police officer. And so you're supposed to know everything about your witnesses. And then what you do is you bring that up during your direct, that you show the jury that you're not afraid of that.
But that's usually lay witnesses, like your police witnesses. Do you really investigate your own officers?
Yeah, you have to, because I'm entitled, as a defense counsel, I'm entitled to know everything about any of the witnesses that are put up on the stand. And the police witnesses are the ones that you scrutinize the most, directly and efficiently. So anytime there's an issue with regards to an IA, was there an IA because he filed a false police report or something along those lines? I'm entitled to know that, and I'm going to be able to use that to impeach the credibility of the police officer. The prosecution was caught completely off guard because the defense did not need to advise them of what they had to impeach these people. They should have known it before they were on the stand. You don't put.
How would they know about a recording from 10 years ago of Mark Fuhrman writing a screenplay or working on a screenplay? And
they knew from the beginning of this case it was going to be racially, that the race issue was a big issue for the defense. Okay, everything that once Johnny Cochran got involved with this case, it became black versus white. Okay, yeah. I mean, if you remember, they had the interior of OJ's house changed, okay, to look more African. All right, yes. And that was Johnny Cochran doing that. So if you know that the prosecution has made this into a black versus white issue,
the defense.
The defense. If you know that, why then would you not explore as to what the warts could possibly be down the line? And if he had used that word before, you bring it out in direct and you say, and he goes, well, guess what? I did use that word and I'm very sorry about it. And I've never used it since, or whatever the situation.
Right.
So, and
what's the best way to get rid of warts, though?
You compound W.
Right? You need some compound W on this prosecution case. Let me ask you about this moment, Jonesy, because this is the moment everyone talks about this, and then Johnny Cochran's closing argument, right, about the doesn't fit, must quit. So, see, I think this was important, but not as important as Fuhrman's testimony of taking the fifth on the question of whether or not evidence was planted. But this is unlike anything we've ever seen before. But it almost looks like the gloves fit there, by the way.
Well, they say that he stretched his hand out and stuff like that, and his hand he had arthritis, which I do, and it does make your fingers go in different directions and all that. Fuhrman, obviously, I mean, that was like huge. That was a big deal. But the gloves is something that visually stuck in everybody's mind because the prosecution was the one who wanted him to put it on in the first place.
Yeah.
And I always feel that courtrooms are theater. From my experience watching court and working in it in court TV, it's a production. And the charm that emitted from that defense team, they were so charming and well dressed, and likable and cool versus the prosecution was a big deal. I mean, when Johnny Cochran came to work for Court TV, there were a lot of people that talked behind his back before he came, that they were upset that he was coming there because he had gotten OJ off for murder, which was his job, by the way. And he walked into the elevator and he had that Southern charm, and he said hello to the ladies and tipped his hat and myself, and everybody melted and suddenly loved Johnny Cochran. I mean, you can't put a price on how charming that defense was for OJ.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely. You know what? I'm thinking the prosecution in the Michael Jackson case should have made him put the glove on.
Yes, and then dance backwards.
That's a good point.
Anyway, Big Girl for Life is really, and she's the one in charge of the, I think is going to be in charge of the Al fan club, is really pushing for Vinny and the Tangents. I'm thinking of next week officially changing the logo up here.
Excellent.
Vinny and the Tangents.
Excellent. I can make appearances at Chiller.
Should it be Vinny and the Gents?
It's the Tangents. You guys are the
No,
Tangents.
but I mean, like, like that's kind of the nickname.
Embrace it.
The Tangents, the Gents, like if we were a gang, like the Sharks or the Jets.
With me, you guys could put on, you're both from Jersey, put on some of that spray on tan, and you could be the tanned Gents.
When you're a gent all your life. I mean, we have to do a
first
little
cigarette for your last dying day.
But the remarkable aspect of just the social, from social media standpoint of where this case took us, it really has opened up vistas and doors that would never open up before.
Could you imagine social media during this trial?
I can't even comprehend what it would be like. But even from the standpoint of, Seinfeld incorporated it in an episode.
Yes,
they did.
Roseanne incorporated it in an episode.
Well, here's the other thing. OJ was a big deal for Court TV, obviously, but we had a lot of big trials before that. And as you said, put us on the map, even though we were well respected at the time. But here's the thing. Every single network came out and covered it. Even the comedy network at the time would cover it with comedians doing
Saturday Night Live. Saturday Night Live was doing cold opens with the OJ.
You had to. It was. It's still to this day in our lifetimes. Although maybe not in your lifetime, Al. Was this bigger than Fatty Arbuckle or not?
No, and the one I keep pushing for, the Lindbergh kidnapping, which I think the first time I met you, Vin, you were covering that story.
Yeah. Did you have an alibi for that one?
I did have an alibi because I lived in Englewood Cliffs, and they lived in Englewood. Okay. That the house where this happened was a house they were building for themselves.
So Danielle here, this is interesting. Danielle says, Al, I heard they took down pictures of OJ with his white friends and showed pictures of him with only black friends.
That's correct.
And he only had white friends. By the way, he and I don't know, maybe things just fell apart with his first wife, who was black, right? And his second wife, you're looking at here, who he met when she was 18. I think he was 30.
At a restaurant called The Daisy. She was a waitress at a restaurant called The Daisy.
Yeah, so it's interesting. And the other aspect of this that played a big role, and we even heard that afterwards from one of the jurors who spoke out and said, this verdict was payback for Rodney King.
To an extent, it may not have been payback, but it certainly.
No, she actually said that, Jonesy. The juror said, this verdict was payback for Rodney King. Crazy.
Well, you know what though, Vin, when you have your chief investigator take the Fifth Amendment, how do you blame a jury at that point? I mean, I'm not
blaming the jury. I'm not blaming the jury.
No, I'm just saying that because a lot of people blame the jury. Okay, but I'm looking at it from the standpoint of the jury charges and what they're told to do and how they're supposed to vet the evidence and take a look at it. If the prosecution does not make their case, then that person must be acquitted, regardless of whether or not, I have a sneaking suspicion he's guilty, but you have to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. And, I don't, you mentioned about his first wife. His first wife was at the trial, was there with her kids. She had 3 kids with him. Their one daughter died before she was 2 years of age. She drowned in their swimming pool. But the other 2 children were at the trial with the first wife. The first wife, who, by the way, was his high school sweetheart, and married her when he was, I think, 19 and she was 18. And and then they had 3 kids, and one tragically died before she was 2.
And did he drown? He drowned in a pool, didn't he?
It was a she. She drowned. She drowned in a pool. Yeah. So I mean, he had 3 kids. Then one died. And then he had 2 kids with Nicole. As I said, but let's take a look at this guy's, what he did up to that point. I mean, he was the NFL Player of the Year from 72, 73, and 75. Hall of Fame in 1985. Played for the Bills 9 years. First player to rush for over 2,000 yards. He was
Heisman Trophy.
He was a Heisman Trophy winner, which is and we have him to thank. There was a comedian I saw that said we have him to thank for the only Jew to win a Heisman, and that's the Goldman family. We won his Heisman in a civil trial. But it's I mean, the man had incredible credentials. He was a whiz with regards to like marketing. I mean, he did RC Cola. He did, of course, Hertz commercials. He was in movies.
Love RC. When I was a kid, I loved
RC Cola product.
That's the original. Isn't that the original? Like before Coke, there was RC, I think. Or Royal
no, I think Coke. I think Coke came first. I think Coke came first.
I don't know about that.
Everyone talks Coke, Pepsi. RC is right up there.
RC. My mother used to tell me when she would go to the soda shop, she would get RC Cola and get the RC Cola with like a scoop of ice cream in it, vanilla ice cream. I mean, so I would, you go to, my father was, and I inherited this. So we had an extra refrigerator down in the basement. So, when he would go shopping, he'd buy in bulk. And this is before bulk stores existed. So when we would go soda shopping, I would make sure I'd go with him because I wanted to make sure we were stocked up on the RC because my dad might end up buying the Coke, right? So,
or worse yet, C&C, the 10-cent cola.
Oh no, I don't like the C&C. No,
yeah, and then there was Cot. If it's Cot, it's Cot to be good.
Yeah. What'd you think of Tab?
Oh, hated Tab.
My mom drank it. It was awful.
I did like
Fresca was good.
My favorite original diet drink was Pepsi Light. Do you remember this?
Yes. With the lemon.
We put a little lemony taste in and took out half the calories in like a light blue can with some yellow on there. Pepsi Light was good.
Yes.
Do you like to remember your eyes?
Yeah. So let me ask you this, because Melly has a great.
We're not going to talk about New Coke. New Coke was legendary. They changed the formula of Coke.
Oh, it was horrendous.
And they came out with New Coke. Then they came back with the real Coca-Cola. But here's my theory. My theory is they changed it purposefully so that when they brought it back, they could use a different sugar so you would not notice the cheaper product.
Well, I got a better theory. It's the same guy that screwed up Core TV the first time. Okay, that had the Coke situation. All right, I mean,
which one?
I'm sorry. Which one? When all of a sudden it stopped doing live trials.
Yeah.
I know who you mean. Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
and then we got what you got 4 guys that lived together in Staten Island doing friggin' pranks in a supermarket.
Don't forget about the Carbonaro effect. Listen, Melly,
I want to mention one thing though with regards to now OJ was in a bunch of films. He was in The Towering Inferno. He was in all of the Naked Guns. I did see someone say he was in Airplane. I don't believe he was in Airplane. Okay, I don't think he was in the Airplane.
I don't think so.
Okay, but the one thing that I found out that was fascinating to me was that he was considered for the role, the title role, okay, in the Terminator.
Wow.
What?
He was considered in the as the title role in the Terminator, and the reason why they didn't use him was because they thought he was too nice. They thought he was going to come across as being that he was just too nice of a guy to be the Terminator, and so he did not get that movie.
And this is something else Kato talked about last night.
I'm sorry?
That was his image, though, right?
Yeah. Well, this is what Kato told me last night, that he was the one thing about OJ was he was very, very concerned about his public image and perception. He wanted everyone to like him. Mm-hmm. And there was a difference behind closed doors, obviously, right after all of this. But, he never witnessed violence, but he witnessed the arguments and some of the ugliness behind closed doors. And he said he was very, very, very conscious of his public image. And so I think everything that we knew or thought about OJ was him putting on a lot of a show. I don't think it was the real deal. I don't think there was a genuineness to who he was beforehand. It was him putting on the show, and then behind closed doors did what he had to do because he was very conscious of it. Now, I want you to ask you about Melly's comment here, because this is a great comment. Two-tier justice system that favors the wealthy and famous. What advantages did O.J. Simpson have because of his wealth?
Well, he was able to spend $7 million on his defense.
He was able to afford that defense team.
I mean, so, his, if I'm not mistaken, his net worth prior to the trial was like $11 million. And that afterwards, he ended up having like less than $4 million. So, it was $7 million, $8 million worth of defense.
But now everyone says, let me ask you this, though. Let me ask you this, because we get back to the Fuhrman thing. Like Fuhrman, his testimony unraveled because they found the recording, right, of him saying those things. Unless you're spending $7 million on your defense, there's no way that you're going to be able to dig that up.
That's right.
Dig things like that up. And that's the thing. I think there's a misperception by the public and even by people, by lawyers that appear on court TV, that the money advantage is you're buying better lawyers. Yes, there's an advantage there. Where the real advantage is versus a public defender is the level of defense investigation that you can afford.
Well, you do have, I mean, not to short as a public defender. I mean, I'm a public defender in three different towns, now three, they merged. But as a public defender, we do have access to investigators. We do have access to getting things tested and things along those lines. The problem is it's a little more difficult. Okay, we have to get permission to do it. It's not as easy if you can just walk in and get F. Lee Bailey to get his investigator to start, trailing these people. But I mean, the public defender system is still a very good system.
The original question was about the disparity and the advantages of being rich in court and how you're treated differently. This isn't really being treated differently by the courts as much as it is the privilege of wealth. It's no different with medical care. I mean, there's a reason why presidents live to be like 100, versus like the common man, because you're getting the best like possible treatment in the world. So your wealth allows you to buy these lawyers, and that's not a reflection on the court system giving the wealthy an advantage. It's life. It's
like, you know what? I thought it was Dan and Yogurt that expanded your life. Remember those commercials?
Yes, they would show the 100-year-old lady.
Yeah, and they were there eating yogurt. So a lot of people are talking about this now in the true crime community. Serial killer, mass murderer Glenn Rogers allegedly told his sister he was going to kill Nicole 2 weeks before the murder. And to this day, his family believes that he, not OJ, killed Nicole and Ron.
Wow.
And I believe this is the same man who was hired as a painter by Nicole.
Is there a reason why he was going to do this?
I don't know. I mean, he might just be a psychopath.
I mean, he might be a psychopath, but I always thought the better news story is if we find out like tomorrow that OJ didn't do it, like that's the news story.
Yeah, then the civil jury would have gotten it wrong. So this is interesting. I'm going to look more into this because I think there's enough interest.
When's the last time OJ called you, Vinny?
Well, he called. So Lisa Bloom and I were doing our show on Court TV, and in the aftermath of the O.J. Simpson trial, issues would come up during trials, and oftentimes you make the analogy, oh yeah, this is like when in the O.J. trial X, Y, and Z happened. And that happened on our show once. And immediately O.J. Simpson called Court TV and wanted to correct, whether it was me, Lisa, or one of the guests, I don't remember. But he called Court TV, and Court TV didn't put him through to our show.
Oh, man.
Like,
who was in the director's booth?
Like, how great is, like, that's television, baby. That's television. You put them on.
When we're off there, I want to know who the director was.
It wasn't the director. This was higher up, the suits.
Oh, yeah, I can guess.
The suits wouldn't put OJ on. Like,
wow.
We didn't find out that he called until after the show.
Wow.
But put him on. If he wants to talk, why would you not put him on the air?
I just want to correct something that Jonesy said with regard to the presidents. Only 4 presidents have lived past 90, Jonesy.
Well, in modern times,
like the medical care you're talking about, and 2 of them, one is John Adams. Okay, so he was number 2. Okay, and then Herbert Hoover, and then you had Gerald Ford, and then you had Carter. So
okay, so do you dispute my point that the wealthy, that the presidents get the best possible health care and live longer than the common man? Look at the current state of the presidents, how old everybody is. And, maybe going back, like, in the old days, they didn't live as long. But do you dispute that point, that they get the best health care and therefore live longer lives?
Well, they get the best health care. I mean, they have a health care program they have insurance. Okay. And they have, they've also got money. Okay. So, I mean, they're all pretty wealthy. I mean, that's the one thing that when Richard Nixon was vice president under Eisenhower, he left the White House destitute. He had nothing to his name. And he swore that would never happen again because he learned how to work the system. And then when he left the White House, when he resigned, he was a multimillionaire.
How old was Bush? How old was President Bush when he passed away?
I believe he was under 90. He was definitely under, it was probably 89, he was probably close. And Reagan was in his late 80s also.
And he got shot. And he got shot. That's correct. So he did get good health care on that one. But, it's not guaranteed. I mean, the funny thing is that the Dannon yogurt commercial, all those people lived in the mountains of the Urals or something like that. Yes. And they were all living to 116 years of age. I can't imagine they had any health care whatsoever.
I can't imagine they had yogurt.
I was getting, or refrigeration for that matter. Maybe that's the whole thing. Refrigeration screws you up. But the Urals are cold though, so I don't know how much you really would need refrigeration.
So, do you think what do you think they did with the gloves? The evidence?
Well, wouldn't they return it? Oh no! So OJ claimed it wasn't his, so they wouldn't return it to him.
That'd be funny. At the end of the trial, would have to return my gloves back.
But they would have to return everything, right? That belonged to you if you were found not guilty.
Yeah. Well, even if you've been found guilty, or in some instances, you can get some.
So
of the
what
stuff
became
back.
of the gloves?
I wonder where they are.
I can tell you that Jack Ruby's
slippers
pistol that he was used to kill Lee Harvey Oswald ended up going back to his brother, and then his brother auctioned it off. So the gloves could conceivably go back to the OJ family, or because they may have some value, they would go to the Goldmans because the Goldmans, have a very, very
but if he's claiming they're not his, does it go back to him?
So Glenn was apparently the Casanova killer.
Who was that?
The other suspect now in the double homicide.
There have been rumors going back and forth as to who the potential murderer could have been and things along those lines. I think it's kind of hard pressed to see anyone other than OJ. And now with OJ dead, The sad part is he's no longer going to be searching for the killer like he was doing before.
Well, there were people that erroneously accused, said like maybe his kid did it because people didn't understand DNA back then, and they were trying to say like, well, his child's DNA would be similar or something to that effect.
Yeah, his child had some emotional issues, but I can't imagine he could have ripped his mother's neck open the way she was murdered.
I'm not saying that he did, and I don't believe he did, and I don't wish to point any finger at the gentleman, but it just people were grasping at straws and saying things like that at the time.
Well, they're still saying
the drug dealers. How about the drug dealers?
Well, people are still saying, and there's a faction, and it's a drumbeat that's getting louder and louder, that OJ didn't do it by himself, and people are trying to point the finger at one of his sons as being there with him at the time. I don't see the evidence of that, but here's the other thing with this case, and the fact that he wrote this note that was clearly a suicide note,
right?
That he's in the Ford Bronco, threatening to take his own life, and you've got
AJ Callings, right?
Yeah,
AJ Callings driving, a phone call from his college coach McKay, talking him out of taking his own life. Like, aren't these all reactions and actions of a man whose life has, he knows the life that he had was over at that moment?
Well, yeah, that's what he said in the letter. And then, then you just take a look at the bizarre thing he did at the wake, when he went and was talking to the corpse and kissed the corpse on the lips. And just a very bizarre, the man was just bizarre. But that Bronco chase, you want to talk about it as that delayed a championship basketball game.
If I'm not mistaken, David Hasselhoff, who was a huge music star in other countries, David Hasselhoff was having a pay-per-view, if I'm not mistaken, that evening, or some sort of TV special that was supposed to break him out in America and make him a huge musical star here, like he was in other countries. And he went up against the Bronco.
The Knicks were playing. I think it was the Knicks.
Yeah, they got into the game.
They
right?
started showing it at the Garden, and everyone was talking. Could you imagine, though, if everyone had a cell phone at that moment?
Yeah.
Like wherever you were, everybody would be staring at their cell phones.
Well, then they do a split screen.
So different.
Do you know that OJ had a pay-per-view special in 2006, which was a show that was a takeoff that he was going to do for like kind of Candid Camera?
Was it as good as when Farrah Fawcett had her body painted on pay-per-view?
No, but it was called Juiced. And what he would do is he would have these things and he would jump out and he goes, "You've been juiced."
It was the same as Punked, but it was juiced.
But it was juiced. In 2006, it was a pay-per-view. It's on DVD now. You can get it, but for like the longest time, you were unable to get the damn thing. But
and this was after
the show called Juiced.
Unbelievable.
And he was making a movie called Frogmen at the time, which was a where he was a killer, special forces killer who was able to use a knife.
Yes.
Okay.
Wow.
That was his nom de guerre was the knife.
And this was at the time of the
murder. Yep.
Wow.
And then they stopped production of it, and the movie never saw the light of day.
All right, Navy Mom says they just don't fit. Those gloves do not fit. I thought it was pretty close. He's wearing rubber gloves under it, right?
Yeah, well, he had to. He had to. They was required to put the gloves underneath it. And if you don't take your medicine with regards to your arthritis, your fingers will start to get a little puffed up and things along those lines. And those gloves have been tested with all different types of I wouldn't say alcohol, but I mean things along those lines that would be used to shrink, basically would end up shrinking them.
And they're also left in the rain, by the way. You leave suede gloves out in the rain, they're going to shrink on you, Jones. Yep. You know that.
Yes.
Yep.
So White Rabbit here, OJ had the gloves on, so I don't think there would have been any transfer of DNA from the actual courtroom demonstration.
Yes, plus I think all of that, with all due respect, White Rabbit, I think all of that testing was, said and done at that point.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, they definitely. But I'm wondering though, like if you retested them to see if this other guy's stuff was on there. Like, was there any? And I don't recall if there was any unknown DNA on the gloves.
Nor do
My
I.
guess is if there was, they would have made a big deal about it.
I
Yeah,
remember
they certainly done that.
when they put the DNA expert up on the stand for like what seemed like forever. I remember it was really hard to like watch, and I worked there. I had to like watch, but it was so technical and so long and drawn out.
Yeah. Well,
and another thing that came
streamlined it now.
Another thing that came from this case, I think, is that jurors grew to expect DNA. If you don't have DNA, then it used to be if you don't have a body or if you don't have a weapon, you don't have a case. Now if you don't have DNA, you don't have a case.
That's because what ended up happening as a result of this trial, every police show started incorporating the DNA experts,
right?
The alleles.
And so then you end up, the Law and Orders and all that other kind of stuff. So now everyone watches those shows. So when you go to a criminal trial, it's the first thing you expect.
Yes, if you're ever being questioned by detectives and they offer you a soda, whether it be a Royal Crown or a Fresca, do not accept the soda. And if you do,
hey, wait, we're not here giving advice to criminals.
And especially if it's a tab, do not.
You're not a criminal if you're being questioned, Vinny.
The tangents are off the rails right now.
If you take,
you guys are all off the rails and gone.
If you take it, if you're offered the soda and they give you a tab and you take the tab, not only would you possibly be guilty, but your taste is going to be questioned.
Right.
Yeah.
So keep that in.
Also, if we're getting the tangents, are you guys like Dawn?
Yeah.
That would make me Tony Orlando.
I want to be a pip. Can I be a pip? I want to be a pip. Can I be a pip?
How many pips were there?
2, I believe.
Were there 4?
There, I don't know.
To this day, when Gladys Knight performs, she brings out her brother, who's a musical director, and he was a pip, and he does a little bit of the pip stuff. But otherwise, she's lost her pip.
There was more than 2 pips, but there's only 2 members of Dawn.
Which would make Orlando. That's a good point. There was, let's see, what other one had? Starland Vocal Band
had the iCats. But that's not like the pips were much cooler.
Yeah. Happy Gnosis with some historical facts for you, Al. The UK first DNA case was a child murderer called Colin Pitchfork. He asked a friend to give his DNA sample for him.
Yeah. That's good. It's like cheating on a test.
Thing. Always eat your pizza crust, as we learned from the accused Long Island serial killer, because they got his pizza crust. Always eat the crust.
Wait, you know what, Jonesy? What was the first trial covered by Court TV?
Well, I came in on the when it was a year and a half old, so I really don't know. But
wasn't it Spath? Wasn't it Spath?
Gary Spath, the police,
Philip at Bergen County, New Jersey. I think that was the first one.
It was a Teaneck police officer that shot Philip Pennell, I believe the kid's name.
Pennell, yeah, unarmed,
and he was shot allegedly in the back by Gary Spath. And a good friend of mine, Bob Galantucci, was the attorney on that one.
That was a not guilty.
And it was a not guilty. Did a phenomenal job. One of the greats. Unfortunately, he's passed away. But Bob Galantucci was one of the greats. And I'm glad. He was just a masterful performance on that trial. And I got the chance to watch it live at the time. So,
Pam and Liv say they can be Sonny and Cher. Who would be Sonny? Who would be Cher?
Well, yeah, but then where do you come in? I mean, Sonny and
Cher.
Exactly.
I'll be
Phil Spector. You could be Phil Spector because he produced them on certain things. Sonny worked with Phil Spector.
Wow.
Yes. Well, he learned from him, as did a lot of the greats. Ike Turner learned from
Phil Spector. I'll be Cher.
Okay. I'd like to be Cher. I'm a bit of a queen. A diva, if you will.
The last I just saw Cher again, and she looks younger than she did like 10 years ago.
That happens all the time with those people.
The interesting thing is that my old bandmates, okay, when we started our band, I was 13, they were 16, okay. Now they are 15 years younger than me.
I'm Chastity, but then I'd actually be Chaz.
Yeah, it'd be Chaz. Well, that Chaz works.
You can't be
Sonny and Cher.
You're a star. You're Vinny. You got to be like something bigger than the child.
We could be the Police. There's 3 in that band.
Yeah.
That makes-
Well, but I think I'm going
Peter,
to.
Paul, and Mary. We could be that.
Oh,
Peter, Paul, and Mary.
I want to be Mary.
Vinny and the Tangents, though. It's just got to, and they're going to be. There's talk now.
It's going to be
in the
bigger than Vito and the Salutations.
There's talk about Vinny and the Tangents T-shirts, concert T-shirts.
Oh my!
Can't go wrong with that.
Very
We got to do a
nice.
live. We got to do a whatchamacallit, get together for like have a show at a club or something along those lines.
Oh yeah, we are. We're still working on dates and locations.
You know,
It's got to be Jersey. You got to have it in Jersey, for God's sake.
Well, being as this audience is worldwide, though, wouldn't it really be difficult for us to get like a crowd in the room? To be honest, I mean, we've got followers, but they're all over the world.
Look at this crowd watching the Bronco chase.
Oh, you know, one of the great things I saw during that trial was a billboard, and it was in Los Angeles, and the billboard said, "Free OJ." Okay, and underneath it said, "If you buy 2 Dunkin' Donuts." What a great marketing ploy that was. Free OJ, you had to buy 2 Dunkin' Donuts. So,
all right. If next time we have breaking news, I will need to break dance. Apparently,
pop and lock, Vinny, pop and lock,
popping and locking.
now,
Roxanne,
it's going to be an Olympic sport this year. Did you know that?
Is it?
Hip hop dancing, popping and locking is an Olympic sport this year?
What?
The Summer Olympics, yes.
Wow.
So you missed it by that much.
Missed
When
it
is-
by.
When is watermelon eating coming into the Olympics? Because then I can get into that one.
Yeah, I've always had a problem with like things like that becoming Olympic sports because it's so traditional and ancient. But by the same token, hip hop dancing, I'll watch.
All right, exit 14A. Susan's from 14A. Where's that? 14A.
That's like Elizabeth right in there, right? Near Elizabeth.
Well, yeah,
it's near the airport. It's near Newark Airport.
Yes, it would be Newark Airport because B and C would be towards Jersey City.
I'll be passing that tonight as I'm going to Sayreville to see the Circle Jerks, the Descendants, and the Adolescents in concert.
Very nice, very nice.
Yeah, Lindsay Shea, exit 109/82.
Oh, that's not far from me, man. I'm exit 102.
Yeah, isn't 109 like
live on the boardwalk?
Isn't that
109 would be Red Bank?
Red Bank, right?
Yeah.
Red Bank.
Yeah.
Very
All
cool.
right. Well, it's about that time. We're over an hour, which is good. Good crowd today. Good comments. Good. I think this is an opportunity to kind of come full circle because the 3 of us met or actually worked together for the first time on Court TV Morning Radio. So with the passing of O.J. Simpson, we felt it necessary to touch on O.J. because of the impact that trial has had on the network and has had really on the true crime community and altering everything. It's not a tribute to O.J. Simpson, but I think understanding him and at this point, remembering the victims is where we are. But as I said off the top of the show, it was a strange feeling of indifference, which I usually don't have. Because anytime someone from back in that generation passes away, the 3 of us will text each other about it.
Yes.
And we kind of talk about it that way. This one, I didn't feel like going down memory lane on that, but I think the memories and the significance really manifested itself through the trial and everything surrounding the trial.
I can't help but think of that OJ that we knew as a kid, the one that was on Superstars competitions on ABC and all that jazz. And, I worked at Court TV at the time, and I always wanted to be a journalist. And I actually got to file daily reports for the Los Angeles Times for a 1-900 number that they had on the OJ trial. So, the trial meant a lot to me in my life, and I always thought it'll help me at cocktail parties because, everyone knows about the OJ trial. But I remember that guy jumping over the suitcase at the airport. I can't help but think of the guy who was a hero when we were kids.
I remember him doing, wreaking havoc against my Jets. Okay, in that division when he was playing. I mean, he had you know, he really transcended the game. I mean, his ability to run was remarkable. I mean, he was also a track star at USC, not only a football player. So he was a track star and everything else. And he said that the reason why he learned how to run was because the neighborhood he lived in was so dangerous that if he couldn't get out of a situation quickly, then it was going to be a problem. And he was going down the wrong path, according to him, going down the wrong path. And then he met Willie Mays.
Wow.
And because he's from the San Francisco area. So he met Willie Mays, and Willie Mays inspired him to go into sports and get away from these, the bad kids that he was hanging out
And
with.
then when the sports were over, he went back on the bad path.
And he went on the bad path. And then, so folks, you can see that I have my my book from him. I did meet him, and he did sign it for me.
That's
and
fantastic.
it's part of my Hall of Horrors that I have with my Bill Cosby books and
What
my
was his
Son of
demeanor?
Sam books.
What was his demeanor? Was he charming?
I will tell you, he was very, very, very charming. He was, like interested in what you had to say, and
Yeah.
and it was, and he was the type of guy that would sign autographs all the time, even before this situation. He was one of those guys that if you saw him at an airport or you saw him after a game, he never, ever, ever said no to a kid. He would sign autographs. He'd take pictures with you and things along those lines. And that was maybe him.
To love him.
That was part of the wanting to be liked, which is certainly a situation there. But
it's not a bad quality wanting to be liked.
No. I get it, but when you're hiding your true self,
yes,
that's the problem. Like Jonesy's really nice. Al's really nice. So here's what I need folks to do, because we stream this on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter X. We want to stream it live on TikTok as well. I am 310 followers away from qualifying to live stream from a PC. So if everyone is watching now could go to TikTok, just my name, Vinnie Politan, VINNIE It's down there on the bottom right now. You can see how to spell it. If I can get 310 of you right now to like us on TikTok, we could stream there as well, just to grow the audience and grow the ways that you can watch us. But that's all the time we have for this week.
Now
next week may be a different day, right?
Yeah, I think we're going Tuesday, right? Is that the day? Because unfortunately, I have a legal conference that I need to get my CLE credits, and I will be that's on Friday.
It's called a boondoggle. Jonesy, you're good on Tuesday?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so Tuesday it is. So Tangent Podcast back on Tuesday. We're going to go deep into one of the big true crime stories breaking right now. Follow me on TikTok, share this, and that's it. That's it. We are literally out of time. Say goodbye, Jonesy.
Goodbye, Jonesy.